So a few hours ago, Coach Michael Malone was fired from being the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. Shortly after that, it was reported that Calvin Booth was also fired. Those two dudes just hated each other for years. And it felt like if ownership was going to make a big decision, it would be one or the other. They said, nah, both of y'all gone. So this marks the second coach to be fired in the last month of an NBA season. Like when the Memphis Grizzlies did it, it was obviously a huge shock to everybody. But when you take a step back, sure, it started to make a little bit more sense. Even if you believe that Taylor Jenkins wasn't given a fair share with it, you consider the amount of injuries they've had over the last couple seasons, you could kind of look at it and squint your eyes and say, hey, that's kind of understandable. The writing was kind of on the wall, but none of us even thought about it when they fired his whole coaching staff and brought in a new assistant thing. And one of those assistants being Isalo. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Many people believe that with Isalo's success overseas and the way he reformulated the offense or helped reformulate the offense from the Memphis Grizzlies, whether they like it or not, he was going to be one of the hottest commodity assistant coaches out there. And they believe that it made more sense to get him in as an interim coach and turn into a head coach versus letting him hit the open market and him ended up in Sacramento or him ended up in Phoenix or one of the other potential spots. Cool, that makes sense. This feels like an anomaly. We're not going to see coaches get fired this late into the season. And then the Nuggets did it with 5 games left. 5 games left into the postseason. Now, currently, they're on the 4-game losing stretch, and it hasn't looked great. Some of these Jokic's stat lines and L's are ridiculous. A 60-point triple-double in an L, another 37-point triple-double in an L. It was some nasty, nasty work. And they made their decision. And again, I thought it was going to be one or the other. It was going to be Team Calvin Booth. It was going to be Team Michael Malone, but instead they got rid of them both. And again, just a huge, huge surprise because Michael Malone, different than Taylor Jenkins, had the pedigree. He had the winning associated with his name. Reminder, Michael Malone is the winningest coach in franchise history. Michael Malone led his team, coached the team to a championship 2 years ago, and Michael Malone was 1 game away, 3 possessions away from being in the conference finals just last season. Fired. And now, got people thinking, what the hell could have possibly gone on? So as of right now, this is really the only thing we have on like reasonings behind it all. The move was made with the hopes of winning a title this year in mind, which is different than the Memphis Grizzlies because in my mind, I mean, the Grizzlies were never really truly contenders, and firing a coach that late when you think about trying to reincorporate or get a new voice into the locker room, they kind of were set up for a disaster. And since then they've, I guess they're on a 3-game win streak now, but they were like the 2 seed, 3 seed when they fired Taylor Jenkins, and it took a few games in the Western Conference. You don't really get a few games to figure some stuff out. But with this one, they're saying it's a little bit different. We're not conceding the season. We're really trying to go for it. And Shams Charania said, my understanding is that they felt kind of like the Grizzlies did when the departure of Taylor Jenkins again. So I don't really believe in the Grizzlies though. It's about igniting this team. They lost 4 games in a row. If every time you lost 4 games in a row, you fired your coach, nobody will be a head coach for more than a year other than like Coach Mark Daigneault and Joe Mazzulla. That's like really it. Even the Cleveland Cavaliers have gone on their own personal 4-game lose streak this season. They're now in the bottom half of the league in defensive rating. They felt like the signs were there that this season was not going to end well. They're getting out ahead of what they felt was going to come this offseason, which I think is one of the most interesting things because they said to themselves, based on what Shams Charania is saying, the ceiling of this season with Coach Michael Malone is not good enough. In their mind, the ownership's mind, there was a 0% chance that they would be able to win the championship this season with Coach Michael Malone as the head coach. Now, obviously, we are outsiders. We don't know what the hell is going on in their locker room. The only thing that makes sense if they're saying this, if they're looking to reignite the team, is that there are people on the roster or the entire roster has completely tuned out Michael Malone. If you think about Michael Malone, one of the things I love the most about him, and this is not even an X and O's thing, is how vocal he really was, right? It's just good content for us. And he is not afraid to call his players out. Even, I think it was just after the last night's game or 2 nights ago, he basically threw some of his players under the bus saying that, hey, these boys don't even be watching film for real, right? So I can imagine as somebody in the locker room to potentially tune somebody out if that's the type of respect level I'm getting in the public. But that was like one of the cool things about Coach Michael Malone, because not only was he very critical of his own team, he was very critical about Calvin Booth and his team construction. There's other reports that go on to say that Calvin Booth and Michael Malone went days, weeks, months without talking to each other which is a big conflict of interest. If the guy that's building my roster can't talk to the guy that's supposed to curate my roster to win, then how the hell can we believe as an organization that we can meet in the middle and win those games, right? I mean, Michael Malone has been very candid about wanting veterans, wanting guys that are willing and able to win right now. Calvin Booth, on the other hand, is like, hey, I like keeping these draft picks. I like drafting a Christian Brown or Julian Strother, a Peyton Watson, a Jalen Pickett, a Dayron Holmes. I really enjoyed that part of the game. And I remember after they won their first championship a few years back, Calvin Booth did this interview with Kevin O'Connor, who was at The Ringer at the time. And I think Calvin Booth thought he was off the record, but I guess he wasn't because it was reported / written in the article where he kind of dogged some of the players that had left. Like, if you think about the team that had won the championship, whether it be Bruce Brown, whether it be Jeff Green, whether it be KCP, he went into that as like, man, listen, we love Bruce Brown, but we got players on the team. Peyton Watson does exactly what he does, but he's taller and he's stronger and he's more athletic. Like, that was almost a verbatim quote from Calvin Booth. One thing Calvin Booth also said is we're not in the business of winning back-to-back championships. We're trying to have this sustained greatness, putting it on the same level as the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs won a lot of championships in the Tim Duncan era. They never won back-to-back, but they always had this consistency of being a championship quality team, and they would have a championship year, an off year, a championship year, an off year. Just did it like that, and that was what Calvin Booth was trying to create. Now, if we look at the roster, I am pretty critical of it, right? They have the best player in the world, and when you have the best player in the world, you're going to have a chance. That's how good Nikola Jokic is. Like, and one of the biggest conversations about Nikola Jokic's like overall MVP candidacy is that when he is not on the court, they play like a 17-win team. And when he does play, they're like a 50-win team. That shows you the amount of impact that he has. But because Jokic is so fucking good, it covers up some of those hardships, those bad things on the roster, because you got this crutch. And this crutch of a player is good enough to win your games and make you feel like you're a contender even if you're not. So we're okay with never having a legitimate backup center for Jokic. It is kind of insane to me that we're in this Jokic era. Like, oh, Jokic been an MVP caliber player for what? 5 years in a row now. He's been in conversations for MVP. And there's never been a season where I thought to myself, they had a center on that roster that obviously nobody can replicate what Jokic is doing. But let's just say hold it down. Shout out to DeAndre Jordan. He's a great vet. But you know what that looked like when he get into the game, when Jokic goes out of the game. You know how many times Jokic is checked out of the game and they up by 8, and then he came back in, they was only up by 1, or it's a tie game? Like, everything that I did in those first 6-minute stretches no longer matter. This is a new basketball game. And that is the way the Jokic thing has been. And there's conspiracy theories that would tell you that was by design to make it that Nikola Jokic's numbers look like this. I don't believe that. I think these dudes wanted to preserve their jobs, and by preserving their jobs are trying to build the best roster, but they just had that crutch. And like, if you look at the history, and this is crazy because before this news talked on the podcast, we were talking about what percentage of like team building, and we were using the Nuggets as an example, what percentage of that is luck versus actual doing the right thing and making the right decisions. And I think I said in the episode that it's like 70-30 in the Nuggets case, because how lucky are you to draft one of the greatest centers of all time in the second round? You know what I mean? How lucky are you to make that happen? You had to do some type of scouting to see that he's good enough to draft. They obviously didn't think that he was going to be the best player in the world, but they had to do that. They had to do the Aaron Gordon trade that looks better and better every single day. They had to draft Michael Porter Jr., who was at one point the #1 player in his draft class, but because of his back injuries and everything, he fell all the way down to the teens. They had to pull off the KCP trade. KCP was traded for fodder. It was like Will Barton, and that's it. It was like Will Barton and one other player, no draft capital at all. They had to see that talent that was sitting in Washington, that was coming off a championship a few years before that, and said, hey, we want that on our roster. So Calvin Booth has obviously made some right decisions, but he also has that degree of luck as well. I guess they're done with that. I don't know. I guess they're done with that. I mean, this could be overall, if we're talking about the landscape of the Denver Nuggets, because one of the first things that came to mind when Coach Michael Malone was fired was, what would Jokic think about this, right? I think we always try to figure out what type of input these players have, and no coach or no player is ever going to be like, yup, I was the reason, right? Remember when Mike Brown was just fired a few months back, and everybody speculated that it was De'Aaron Fox's doing because we had that one video of them at practice, and Mike Brown is talking to De'Aaron Fox, and De'Aaron Fox is looking at Malik Monk like this. People speculated that ownership went to their star player, and De'Aaron Fox said, "What do you think about Coach Mike Malone or Mike Brown?" And then it came out later that after he was fired and all of this, De'Aaron Fox and Mike Brown went out to dinner. De'Aaron Fox and Mike Brown have been both vocal about not having any idea or not having a say in these type of things. So I wonder, when you have the best player in the world, do you walk up to him and say, "Hey, your boy Mike Malone," because by our reports, they were like this, "We're going to fire your boy Mike Malone." Didn't Mike Malone come to Serbia after the championship and just hang out for weeks at a time to be with Jokic? And they fired him with the idea of reigniting the team. Now, Adelman, the new interim coach, apparently he's also widely loved within the organization. There was also reports that the players on the roster didn't necessarily love the X's and O's of it. And we have been candid on, not on this, but on my podcast, Small Ball, formerly known as the Kenny Beecham podcast, when they were eliminated from the postseason, one thing I remember saying was that their bread and butter became too predictable. When Jokic and Jamal Murray were out there winning series and winning championships, they did it without the idea of spamming their pick and roll, right? So when you're running it so often, it gives the opposing teams just an opportunity to scheme for it a little bit more. It felt like back in the day, which was like 2 years ago, it wasn't something that was the whole offense. And right now, when you watch them play, it does feel like majority of their offense is coming this way. That is some X's and O's thing that maybe players or the team they were in charge, the ownership is like, hey, we can't let that be the only thing we do right now. And you can say that is what Mike Malone was doing wrong. It's so funny though, because one of the other things I thought about is like NBA players, once it's past February 14th, February 7th, February 14th of the trade deadline, you're like, phew, I'm on this team. I don't have to worry about nothing. It felt like something very similar with coaching as well, because coaches don't get fired after the All-Star break, especially if I'm already on the playoff team. I'm coaching the playoff team. That is gone now. Hey, who else? Hold on. Is there any Eastern Conference team that's in the postseason that is actively on a losing streak right now? I was about to say JB Bickerstaff. He cool. But like you can't ever feel secure in this profession. Michael Malone, championship coach, is just gone. And now you have to think about that adjustment period. Because when you fire a coach in the middle of a season, the new coach, the interim coach, can't break down the offense and incorporate his own new things and shit. It takes time. It takes way too much time. They play tomorrow. They're not about to go against the Kings, and now we're about to see the Nuggets become the highest frequency three-point shooting team opposed to one of the least, the lowest, right? It takes so much time to incorporate new offense, get everybody bought into these things. And sometimes that transition period can be bad. Like I mentioned earlier, the Grizzlies ended up losing, 3 games before they won their first one with Isolo as the coach. The Nuggets don't have that opportunity to feel things out. They got the Kings, which the Kings are playing better basketball, but it ain't really a good team, so they can maybe take care of business. All the time, Jamal Murray might not even be ready for any of these 3 games, which is insane. They got the Grizzlies, who, again, a playoff team, and they got the Rockets, one of the best teams in the league. So Adelman might be playing or coaching his team to potentially a plan, bro, depending on how it goes. Now, we also get the opposite side of things, and sometimes new coach come in and bam, we the best team in the world for a 2-week stretch. That happens too. So we just don't know what side of the coin it's going to be on. And I know this is very, very minuscule in this whole thing. If they continue to lose, right, in this adjustment period, and they end up being the 7th seed, whatever percentage you thought Nikola Jokic had to win the MVP dies. Like that's minuscule in the grand scheme of the Denver Nuggets, right? The Denver Nuggets, like I said, they're trying to win a championship. But the NBA is not going to give the MVP to a 7th seed. Regardless if he's a 7th seed with a tie record or a 7th seed by half of a game, it's not the way it works. We were pushing the boundaries when Nikola Jokic won it as a 6th seed, right? Didn't he win it as a 6th seed? Yeah, he won it as a 6th seed. That was a year that they lost to the Warriors in 5. And that felt like he was pushing the boundaries, and he 100% warranted. But when you have this type of race with these 2 juggernauts and Shea and him, where it's like, ooh, some days I feel like Shea, ooh, sometimes I feel like Jokic, the determining factor might be, hey, the Thunder are about to win 67 games or whatever the number might end up being. So I know that's very minuscule in this grand scheme. I bet they don't give a damn about that when they're thinking about what's going to be next for their organization. But it's something that, to think about. One of the things we talked about on the pod is again, talk about schematically, because this is when we didn't know anything. And even now we still don't know a ton. We're talking about schematically. What about what the Denver Nuggets is doing do we believe can change, right? Especially if you're considering that you're trying to continue to win. And if we go to just the raw stats, the Denver Nuggets right now are the 4th ranked offense, which is still insane. They're the 22nd ranked defense. That's not ideal. No team has ever won a championship while being that bad on the defensive side of the ball. And that might be the main thing. The defensive schemes is just not good enough. But even their offense, though it's 4th in the league, it's a peculiar 4th in the league. There's only 32% of their shots come from behind the arc. They're losing the 3-point battle in every single game. And because you have the offensive juggernaut in Nikola Jokic, a lot of times it doesn't work. But there are times where it matters, where we make 4 threes, 5 threes as a team, and the opposing team takes and makes 10 of them. Then we're so much at a deficit where we don't have much wiggle room as we really want to, right? And that was what we said in the video that we dropped 5 months ago. Is the Denver Nuggets championship window closed? We talked about the lack of 3-point shooting and how that could matter in this whole thing. Oh, I guess I made a couple Nuggets video. Oh my God, I love the Nuggets. Oh my God, just a lot of Nuggets videos. They did win a championship a year ago, so whatever. Again, I do think that one of the more interesting than Mike Malone getting fired is the Calvin Booth thing, because now it begs to question the new guy, whoever that may be, what type of adjustments can they make to this team to open that window back up if you believe it is closed? Because you have the best player in the world, you owe it to that player who's a multiple-time MVP and an NBA champion in your city to continue to make the roster better. And I remember just so many of the fake trades that people were drawing up. It was like Michael Porter Jr., who's like the contract that makes all of this work. Michael Porter Jr. for Zach LaVine is like, that don't really help them as much as you think it does. And what type of players are they missing on the offensive side? What type of players are they missing on the defensive side? It is not an easy job. Like if you think about just what it is, and from a bigger picture, the 30 NBA GM jobs, the Nuggets one is one of the tougher ones. And that's saying something because they already have the guy. But it's about the edges. How do we, this expensive-ass team that is Jokic on the max, Jamal Murray just signed a new extension, and damn it, he's not even healthy right now. Who knows if he's going to be healthy for a postseason. Last year, he wasn't healthy in the postseason. We can't have that again. Michael Porter Jr. is on a max, but it's like a max from 3 years ago, so it's not the same as a current-day max. And we just extended Aaron Gordon. Where's our wiggle room? Where's our wiggle room if those are our 4 guys, unless we're chopping some heads off to get new talent in the door? I don't know. But it is a very surprising and a very intriguing move by the ownership of the Denver Nuggets. One that I don't think anybody saw coming. And the only thing we can do is wait to see what will happen next.